Hi again then guys, and welcome to, of course, another tune setup for one of the 5 vehicles in 1.41 in GT Sport, this time the Porsche 911 Turbo, and this one is actually a return to what used to be one of my most popular series actually in Gran Turismo 6 especially, Special Projects. And Special Projects, for those who are unfamiliar with it, because we have done a few in GT Sport as well, is a series where we do a combination of tuning and liveries to create replicas of vehicles that aren't in the game, usually product or model variations, for instance, and sometimes reimagining cars that don't actually exist, like for instance the episode that I did with a fictional Mercedes A63 AMG, which is the A45, but what if it had the CLK Black Series engine instead? That kind of thing. Now for this particular one, this is kind of a reimagining of history that I wanted to do. And as you saw from the title and from the thumb, it's what if Porsche had actually made a GT3 RS version of the 1981 911. Now, of course, the Turbo is the car that we've got to work with because that's the base vehicle, but in terms of how it compares, I raced the stock version around the Nürburgring GP course, then tuned this one up, of course finished all the livery, that kind of stuff, and then took that one around the GP course as well to see how they compared, because obviously you don't want it to go from a stock 911 to then something that feels like a race car. You still want it to feel realistic. So as far as what I've done, I have dropped the weight by, I believe it was 65 kilos, from 1300 to 1235, because again, the Turbo is typically a heavier model in the range, whereas the GT3 and especially the GT3 RS is a lot lighter. So again, I didn't want to go overboard. I wanted the weight to be kind of realistic, but also lighter. So we've dropped it by 65 kilos. As far as power, once again, obviously you want it to have more. Now, typically that's not actually true because the GT3 RS is never actually more powerful than the Turbo. But of course, this is 1981 and you've got to have some creative license. So I've increased it by, I believe it's 30 horsepower. So instead of 295, it's got 325. Which in other words is 110% power. So I haven't gone crazy. 65 kilos down, 30 horsepower up. As far as the tyres, I tested the stock version with Sport Softs as well, so that it would still be fair. I would recommend turning traction control off for a more authentic experience. Now, as far as the suspension, I've dropped the ride height by only 5mm. From 120 to 115, and that's for 2 reasons. One, of course, is to lower the centre of gravity and to reduce the body roll through corners. That I'll classify as one reason, but the other one is also you don't want to go too low. As I said, it's still got to look and feel like a realistic model, not just a full-on race car, because that defeats even the point. Now, as far as the frequency, we've got 1.9, which I believe is a little bit higher. I tightened that up a little bit. As far as anti-roll, we've got 7 and 6, with, of course, the increase there focused on the back. As far as the compression on the dampers, those are on 62, which I think is a little bit higher than stock, and then 90 for the rebound. As far as camber, the car does already have some, so I've made more of a difference to the front end in particular. 1 degree on the front, 1.5 degrees on the back with no toe. You cannot adjust the downforce, of course. As far as the diff, I've actually opted to leave it stock. And the reason why I wanted to do that is because, again, I wanted it to still feel similar to the 930 Turbo, instead of just this completely different, unrealistically quick version. I want it to still feel that classic DNA come through. So you could change the diff if you want to, but I would actually recommend not doing so because it feels a lot more authentic if you don't. And likewise with the transmission, I've actually left it stock because those ratios work really well with this car. And actually the main reason why I haven't done that is because I didn't want the car to have that high-pitched, straight-cut gear whine that a race box has, because again, that's just not authentic. So that's it for the tune. Of course, you could alter the power and weight if you want to. For instance, if you want to make it technically more authentic and give it maybe a little bit less power, but I wanted to have some creative license with it. Now, as far as the livery side of things, you'll see in a second when I take it on the track that it does have the full livery, but I've actually done 9 different versions of the livery, and I've put them all on my community page. They are up as we speak, so you can download one of them if you want to, or more, of course, and I've done it in green, yellow, white, black, silver, blue, orange, pink, and red. And you'll notice that the colours are fairly muted, more often than not, because again, it's the early 80s. I didn't want the colours of of the car to feel too vibrant or too modern. They're kind of muted, like the orange, for instance, has kind of a terracotta tone to it. The pink is kind of too loud, which is a very 80s thing, of course. The red is pale red rather than vibrant Ferrari red, because again, I wanted it to feel like this classic interpretation of the modern GT3 RS. So that's it for the livery, that's it for the tuning. Now, of course, what you want to see is what it can do in action, how it looks, how it performs, but also how does the lap time actually compare. Well, as it turns out, it compares very, very well, because of course one of the crucial things that I mentioned is I didn't want this car to either feel too good, it doesn't want to feel like a race car, of course, it's still supposed to be a street legal vehicle, but also I didn't want it to be too much quicker even, because that wouldn't be realistic either. You don't want it to suddenly be like 25 seconds quicker on a track like the GP course, so I wanted the changes with the tuning and even the visual side of things to be relatively subtle, so that it's a car for aficionados to appreciate, rather than the cars bashing you over the head with, oh, this is a fancy fast version. So I took the completely stock version on sport soft tyres around the GP course here at the Nürburgring in a 221.3, or just under. It was a 221.295 to be exact. I then took this what if tuned version around and it did a 219.092. So basically 2 seconds or so, about 2.2 seconds quicker. To me, that is perfect, because it is the 911 Turbo to begin with, not just a standard Carrera, so you don't want it to be infinitely faster, but to me 2.2 seconds quicker is really good. That is exactly how it should compare to the car. You can definitely feel a difference through corners in particular. Now, of course, with the increased power, it is quicker on the straights as well, which, as I said, technically wouldn't be realistic, but again, that's the creative license. I wanted the car to be quicker in a general sense, just to have that what-if mentality. So if you do decide to try out this tune, of course you can click the link down below. I'll probably put it in a pinned comment as well, so that you can just go straight to my community page and grab the colour that you want. To be honest, all of them look great, like all of the RS combinations do, and if you do decide to use this what-if custom build, I'd love to hear some feedback if you enjoyed it. But that's it for this build. Of course, click through here at the end to see all of my other sport tunes, and for now, as always, thanks for watching.